Welcome back into Wake Up America. I'm Rob Finnerty. White House Press Secretary Jen Psaki attempted to defend the decision that just $6 of the $128 billion allotted for public schools would come this year in today's Psaki dodge.
A big part of the challenge here for a number of schools is that they need, in order to operate responsibly and given the threat of budget cuts, they need to obligate funds according to spending plans rather than exhausting all balances as soon as they're received. So the challenge here is, how do they plan ahead, right?
Jen Psaki speaking in the White House briefing room yesterday. I want to welcome back our panel this morning. We start with former Lieutenant Governor of New York, Betsy McCoy, the host of Stacy on the Right, Stacy Washington, and the president of Americans for Tax Reform, Grover Norquist, joining us this morning. Nice to see you, Grover. Pleasure to have you on panel. I'd like to start with the situation happening in Washington right now. It looks like Merrick Garland is going to be our next Attorney General. He was asked about some of the Antifa protests, some of the BLM protests that we had over the summer, and he was asked whether or not those specifically would be classified as domestic terrorism, like everything that we saw on January 6th being classified. Let's listen to the soundbite, then Betsy, we'll start with you. Take a listen.
An attack on a courthouse while in operation, trying to prevent judges from actually deciding cases. That plainly is domestic extremism, domestic terrorism. An attack simply on government property at night or any other kind of circumstances is a clear crime and a serious one.
Okay, so just to catch you up, if it happens during the day, it's domestic terrorism. But if the judge and jury have gone home at night and the lights are off, it's not domestic terrorism. That's according to our incoming, it looks to be incoming Attorney General. Betsy, how troubling is this?
Well, it is troubling, and it's one of the many dodges that Merrick Garland took yesterday. He refused to answer clearly what he would do about Hunter Biden's, the investigation of Hunter Biden or the Durham investigation. He did not provide any clear answers about his obligations under the Constitution to ensure that people are treated equally, regardless of their race or ethnicity. And again, in this situation, he also dodged the very large issue of whether this administration is going to prosecute only misconduct on the right rather than violence and attacks from the left.
Stacy, I know you talk about this a lot on your radio show, but how troubling is it? So basically what happened January 6th, which, by the way, we have condemned from the moment it happened here at Newsmax. On the right, the president condemned it, President Trump at the time. But everything that happened this summer, for the better part of 6 months, we saw Chop and Chaz in Seattle, the riots in Portland, Kenosha, Washington, tremendous violence. We saw other networks literally would have reporters in front of blazing infernos saying essentially nothing to see here. But we can't call that domestic terrorism. Why not?
Well, because Antifa is real, and the Democrats know better than to cross the thug army that they have basically risen up in Portland, which is their home. That Seattle, Washington, Portland, Oregon, those are the strongholds of Antifa. We had Andy Ngo on the program to talk about his new book, Unmasked, where he takes all of his research and time with this organization, because they are an actual organized group. And he put all of that information into a book for Americans to actually learn about it. And I recommend people read the book Unmasked by Andy Ngo so they can understand just how real Antifa is. It's not a figment of our imagination. It's real. And the proof that it's real comes primarily beyond what we've seen with our eyes, the burned buildings, the billions of dollars in property damage. It comes from the fact that this man, Merrick Garland, plans to be the Attorney General of the United States, the chief law enforcement officer of the land, and he doesn't plan to stop Antifa, but he plans to stop people who just want to approach the Capitol to protest. And what happened on the 6th, we've already condemned it, as Rob said, but the bigger deal here is that we're going to use terrorism tactics, tactics we use to fight terrorism, to stop Americans from assembling together if they're on the political right. But on the left, we're going to turn our faces away. We're going to turn and simply ignore the actual violence and mayhem, 30 deaths, 700 police officers injured last year, federal law enforcement included. by Antifa and Black Lives Matter. So this is a bastardization of the Constitution, and it cannot be allowed.
And Grover, now the city of Minneapolis is trying to recruit. They're spending $6 million trying to recruit young cadets. Many of those cadets say they have no interest in working in Minneapolis or St. Paul, which are two of the most beautiful cities in America, but that was not the case this summer.
Absolutely. I mean, this is one of the challenges you have when you denigrate police and blue lives don't matter. I want to thank Mitch McConnell for making sure that Merrick Garland was not on the Supreme Court. When he sat there and gave those answers and said he will selectively, he'll know terrorism when he sees it, night, day, private business, government building. I'm sorry, he's just told us, I will use laws selectively against people I don't like. I'm glad he's not a judge. I wish he wasn't going to be Attorney General.
Yeah, don't forget, Barack Obama tried to get this guy on the Supreme Court way back when. He's friends with Joe Biden. Yeah. And, Amir, you're an attorney, a constitutional law specialist. I'll tell you what's fascinating to me, and it should be fascinating to every American, doesn't matter how you voted on November 3rd, is the Hunter Biden situation, which is out there. That remains an open question. Will that be investigated? Most Americans think it should be.
Well, it is being investigated. It's being investigated by the U.S. attorney in Delaware. And Merrick Garland didn't say that he was going to stop that investigation. He wouldn't commit to devoting resources towards it, as Bill Barr did with respect to Mueller's investigation. But let's be fair here. I'm not going to bat for Merrick Garland's responses. I think that he was evasive, non-committal. I think that he didn't address the questions, and he pledged to have ignorance to issues that he should have been familiar with, such as, will you prosecute people who are illegally crossing the border on the southern border? He should have been prepared for that. But that's when he's talking about domestic violence, or domestic terrorism, rather, being something that happens during the day versus night. He was talking about an assault on ongoing government processes. He was talking about if the court was in session.
Amir, he wouldn't say the word Antifa. So many on the left don't acknowledge that that's even a term. They can call members of Congress that are Republicans white supremacists or white nationalists, but you can't even say the word Antifa. He was being so deliberately vague yesterday. He was asked about, is it legal to tear down the 450 miles of border wall that was put up while Trump was president? And his exact quote was, I haven't thought about that. I mean, this is a guy that's going to be Attorney General.
That's my point. Going into a confirmation hearing, he had plenty of notice about this. He should have thought about it. And there are certain issues, I think, that he was questioned about, that his answers were just downright wrong. But I think that he was being too deliberately neutral about things, and that he's not trying to get, as Ted Cruz was saying, he came across as somebody who was really being sitting for a confirmation hearing of a judge, rather than somebody who's going to be the chief attorney for the United States, which is a position where you need to advocate. So he should have taken stronger positions.
Yeah, I mean, Betsy, Amir, your point's taken. I think the concern is here, yes, he didn't say he's not going to investigate Hunter Biden. I just think the double standard is glaringly obvious. If this were Eric Trump, Donald Trump Jr., can you imagine if everything was equal with Eric or Donald Trump Jr., this would be investigated from here to kingdom come. But with Hunter Biden, it's like, well, he's coming out with a book and he's troubled. Betsy, your thoughts?
Well, it's very unfortunate because before the election, obviously, the social media and the Democratic Party did everything they could to prevent American voters from even knowing who Hunter Biden was. And now that the election is over, it is important that the president's son and the president be held accountable for their actions, their business relationships, their possible criminal activity with China, and their misrepresentations about it.
Betsy, I think that Hunter and Joe Biden's brother James, I don't think they ever thought that Joe was going to become president. So I think they sort of operated under the under the impression that he was going to just be a former vice president and a former senator for the rest of his life. And how things have changed. Panel, stick around. You're going to be back with us. I want to talk about the COVID relief bill, the non-bipartisan COVID relief bill. Grover Norquist, I know you've got a lot to say on that. Also want to talk about Andrew Cuomo. Betsy McCoy, we'll get with you on that as well. Stay with us. More Wake Up America coming your way after the break.